Hello guys, welcome back. In this video we'll quickly have a look at how we can start using the processing IDE. We'll write our first program and see what the processing IDE has to offer. I had mentioned that processing is basically Java, but it's a bit glorified version of Java. So you're not writing system.out.print to print something, you're just writing print, the print function. So how do you know what functions exist? Essentially go to processing.org, go to reference, and this is where all of the functions are. If I find print, that's the print function. This talks about what the function does in a very high level, and it points you to extra documentation. So it says libraries of JavaDocs, which will take you processing GitHub IO JavaDocs library, that URL there. This is how the print function documentation is laid out. There's an example. You could literally copy and paste this into the IDE, and then you can run this, and you see that down at the bottom. So yeah, there's nothing here. There's nothing in here because you're not drawing anything to the canvas. This is how it works. So that's the documentation. I can copy and paste this example, right? And so begin f is 0.3 and I is 1024 end. So that's essentially how simple it is to try out code. I want to draw a rectangle. So I'm just going to use hard-coded values for now. I'm going to draw it 1010 to 9090. So this is what you get. This is called the canvas or the sketch. So you're drawing on the sketch, or you can imagine this to be like a sheet of paper where you want to draw something programmatically. So yeah, this is called the PDE, Processing Development Environment, and it outputs a sketch, and sketch is this thing here, right? So you see how this is really small. That's 100 by 100 pixels. That's because I haven't told it what size it has to be. So I could do size here, but we can do size here and say I want to do 400 by 400, right? So it's changed. I did 100. Sorry. 400 by 400, and I just replay and see. Now if I want to fill up the square, and that'll fill up the screen exactly. Okay, but let's say I don't want to have to type this every single time, so there's a variable called height that I can use, and similarly there is a variable called width, and then if I do this now, it's going to fill up the whole thing. But when I change height to 200, it'll still fill it up exactly. Instead of this, I'll probably do 0.9, right? This is how I do it in my programs. So they're all relative positions, sort of like CSS for web programming, right? So that's 0.9. So, and we can do the same thing here, width times 0.1, and height times 0.1. If you don't understand this, that's fine. We'll talk about this later. We'll be talking more about rectangles pretty soon. If you got any questions, you can ask me in the comments. So feel free to post any comments or questions. You saw what we did with the size, but usually the structure of a processing sketch looks something like this, right? There's a void setup and a void draw, and this code here in setup runs once. So I don't want the size to be set every frame, so I set the size here. I want to set this to 200, and I want to draw a line. Same concept. I will look at the reference documentation, but I want to start the line at height by 2 as the first point where I want to start the line. The second point, I want to make it width, height. Right, this will draw a line continuously every frame between these 2 points. I could also say -10, so that'll draw it 10 pixels above the bottom edge. You see that? That's the 10 pixels there. I could also say 10 pixels to the left of the right edge. And there it is. So it draws the line exactly from the center to that point. But it's drawing it in the same place every second. So what's happening now, when I run this, every frame it's drawing the line in the same place. What I could do is, instead of hard coding these values here, I could use a random function and say a random of 10, and here I could just say random of 10. But to make it exciting, let's make it 20 so you can see the difference. So it'll generate a random coordinate and draw the line, right? You see how it's made a cone because it's trying to draw lines. So I don't want that. So what I want is that I only want to see one line. So for that we have background, and we set the background to 255, which is the maximum value, which is the white color. So we want the background to be white instead of the pale gray that comes on by default. And there you go. So there's a line like a ticker in the odometer in a very old car, right? It's just ticking. Or if you're a science student, some dial in a lab. If you're an electrical student, that's very common to notice this sort of behavior. So we created a ticking little clocky thing, just like that. Now, I think so far this has been good. We looked at different functions. I will see you guys in the next one.